prosecution outlined how accounting practices
fuck?
of Conley
What?
Productions did not
What
follow
kind of
the
likeness is that?
procedure.
If they were great artists, they'll be in a museum.
The evidence today may signal at least one
I'm fucking fodder for cartoonists now.
Welcome back to another episode of Gutter Boys. This is episode 34 with special guest Katie Skelly. They'll be joining us after the break, so you can just skip through this if you want. I mean, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. We will be doing some news here, because that's what we do. Listeners who have been with us since day one know that this is a reference to episode 1, where we had no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we still don't. So, full circle, baby.
We're here. What is this? We're almost 2 years in the game now.
Yeah.
Well, a year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that is a year and a half. Yeah. Little over.
Yeah.
Little over. Been wasting away in Margaritaville for 2 years nearly. We should do something for the anniversary when we actually hit 2 years in February.
I think we should probably just wait till episode 50, right?
Nah, because 50 is going to be what? Like 2021? Like late 2021?
Yeah.
And
I don't know. It'll probably be summer of 2021.
you know what?
Yeah.
We could...
assuming we keep this schedule.
Right. If we keep up with the 2 per month format, we'll see how that goes. It already got screwed up because this episode was supposed to air last Monday, and so now we're here a week later.
But you all, in theory, had a fuck ton of autoptic stuff to go through, so
that's true.
Hopefully you got to enjoy that.
Yeah, you got to...
That was a big content drop. The Thompson
you
brothers.
got to hear that fucking... Actually, you know what? That one did numbers.
I mean, I'm not
that one did
surprised. I will say that I was throughout the day during the autoptic programming, I was like, every time an episode dropped in our feed, I was posting a story plugging it. And when I posted that I actually tagged Craig Thompson, I got a bunch of DMs being like, what the fuck?
Saw that.
Like,
I think I got a couple DMs too being like, what? And I was like, I don't know. We don't run autoptic.
What are you guys doing?
What do you want? This is not, we didn't handpick Craig. It was like, hey, we really need you on the show. We really need to hear about your experience of being Asian.
Yeah. I will say this, much like the Comics Journal, they would dish criticism, but they would also allow creators in their pages. So, Gutter Boys is an equal opportunity podcast. We might dunk on your ass, but if you end up on the show, we'll probably just dunk on your interview. True.
We're consistent.
No, I don't know. So yeah, let's get into news. JB, the most important news is that you have a new book out.
That's right, baby. We're back. We've got issue 2 of Daikaiju Team Alpha, which is a collaborative project between me and my buddy Eric Schneider-Gutierrez, and that is currently available right now. I got a copy in my hand. It's very, very nice. It's roughly about 20 pages, 4-color ISO, edition of 250 copies. So once these are gone, they're gone, unless Eric decides to do a reprint, and who knows if he'll want to do that. So yeah. I'm sure these will get reprinted as a collection at some point, but that's, a year, 2 years from now. So, and also, like, if you're just a hoarder and collector like me, you'll want this anyway, because...
Yeah.
And it is well done. I mean, if you have seen any of
Absolutely.
Eric's work or anything that he prints, it's fantastic. Like, professional level printing. Yeah. The laminate covers are really nice. Rounded corners. All kinds of sizes and formats that he uses. Just go check it out. Go check out his website.
Yeah.
Support the artist that he supports, because he's definitely not making a ton of money on this, but he's just in the game because he loves it and he loves supporting other artists. So big shout out to Eric, who we really do need to have on the show at some point.
Yeah, we'll get him on soon. Yeah, those books are super well printed, and I'm excited to get a copy of issue number 2. Issue number 1 was fantastic. So what's the website? Is it realllyeasypress.com?
I believe it's really-easy-press.com, and then on Instagram it's really.easy.press. And then also if you want to...
Yeah, it's really-easy-press.com. Yeah, you were right. Other news. Okay, so let me just go ahead and clarify this. At this point, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, I made a meme on our social media handle, which you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at GutterBoysPod now. But I made a meme shortly after the Ignatz Award winners were announced that pretty much just expressed my displeasure with the way the Ignatz Awards went down. I've been referring to them in my head as the rigged Nats Awards.
Got 'em.
But yeah, got their asses. No, but here's the thing. I don't want to take away from any of the winners. The winners, even if they weren't who I wanted to win, they still make comics and I respect them. And I do want to say the main problem that I had with the Ignatz Award is that Rosemary O'Connell, who did that book, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. I think it's Laura Dean, not Laura Dern. And I don't want to take away from their art because they are an incredible artist. But they ended up winning one of the top prizes at the Ignatz Awards while also being on the jury for the Ignatz Awards. So my main beef is like, it's just kind of weird that a juror won a top prize, and I just believe that it kind of just has like a stink on it. Not saying that there was like collusion or anything like that, because I mean, that person is a fantastic artist, but I really do think for transparency's sake and to keep things, non-controversial, I do think that if you have work that's nominated for an award, you should not be allowed to be on the jury board for that award ceremony. At that point, I think a solution to that would have some alternates that could come in once the nominees are announced. And if, somebody is, nominated that's on the selection panel, then, get them the fuck off. If you want to be on the jury board, then don't nominate yourself, which I don't know exactly how the Ignatz nominations go. I think they're decided on by the jury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and then the voting is then done by whoever registers, right?
Well, I think you can vote online, and I know that at SPX they bring around those papers.
Yeah.
That everybody votes on, which,
I did write-ins. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's really funny because it's like they ask for those on, I don't know if it's Sunday or Saturday, and it's like they somehow count everything in like an hour, which Yeah, but someone told me that, and I don't know if this for sure happened, but somebody DM'd me saying that Simon Hanselman said that if you win an Ignatz brick, you're actually cursed. And so,
that's funny.
Fuck all y'all. I do want to say this, and not discrediting the artist, but I really do believe that Andrew Lorenzi's book Molto was robbed of the Best New Talent Award. I will say that. I will ride for Andrew Lorenzi's book. And also, that dude's been making comics for like a decade. So, it's kind of weird to see, somebody that's been in the game for so long, nominated for, outstanding new talent just because they haven't been recognized by the Ignatz people before. But,
That issue can be found in other awards, comic awards rather. Like the Eisner's has a similar award for, rising artist or, new artist or whatever. And it's almost always someone that's been doing this for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And so either in industry terms, you're not really a rising artist until 10 or 15 years into your career.
Yeah, when you're already burnt the fuck out.
Right, yeah. Or it's just totally arbitrary.
Yeah. I actually pissed a lot of people off with making that meme and posting on our social media. I got some DMs that were like, oh man, you should be supportive of all comics. And I am. I'm not taking away from that person. I'm not saying that Rosemary didn't deserve to win that award. I'm just saying that the process is a little fucked up in my opinion.
Yeah.
But, it's whatever. It's not like I said, I don't want to come off that I'm bashing any of the winners because congratulations and respect to all the winners. I think that there are certain books that deserve to win more than others, but that's just personal taste, I will say this year's winners made me feel out of touch with comics for the first time. And we were kind of talking about quote unquote SPX brand comics on that episode with Josh Pettinger.
Oh,
we
yeah. From Question from Michael Sweater.
Yeah, and I want to say that this year maybe that's what the SPX brand comic is.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
for an example, I don't even know what category it was nominated for, but I know Frank Santoro's Pittsburgh was nominated for an award and it lost, and that's one of the greatest comics that's ever been released, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, but I know that book was critically praised. So the fact that that's not winning at a ceremony that's for independent comics, it just made me feel really out of touch with, I guess, what's going on when I felt like I had a pretty good understanding. But maybe that's the SPX brand comic. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of those books at one kind of veer into artsy young adult, you know?
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Sure.
That's totally legitimate. There's an audience for that, obviously. But we really should just kind of all come in and be like, you know, there's more to comics than this. You know, like,
Yeah.
there's different stories we could tell. There's different ways of rendering and different ways of formatting a page. And I don't want to say that it's because the small press in general is in an echo chamber of sorts, because obviously it's not. I think when you look at a lot of the independent creators who maybe were not recognized by Ignatz or any other formal body award, whatever, they're obviously pulling from other sources outside of the bubble. But I feel like the ones that did win this year, I just don't see any real, like, progress. I don't know what other words to use other than, you know, something that pushes the needle in terms of, like, how we understand comics as a medium.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I can do
know,
that. I'm not, you know, like, I'm not going to joke about me doing that because I'm clearly not doing that. I'm just making dumb fucking comics in a pretty standardized format. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, like a big thing is people were like, when I posted that meme about the Ignatz, people were like, well, how would you fix it? And it's like, I don't know, like, because it seems like the jury selection for the Ignatz Awards are like this, like, cool person's club, maybe, where everybody kind of knows each other. And I think what you need is you need a jury that consists of, like, you need your old head-ass cartoonist in there that thinks everything sucks. You need your young adult hotshot that's 20 years old and cranking out a fucking graphic novel every 6 months. You need a comic critic in there. Like, so, like, I think that's the solution to the problem is, like, as far as, like, you know, something like this, I just wanted to address that because it's like, oh, well, you have an issue with it, but how would you fix it? Well, I guess, you know, just a very...
Which is also, like, the weakest fucking argument you can come up with when addressing something that you don't agree with. You're like, well, how would you do it better? Like, that's not an argument.
Right.
You know, like, that's just you being a bitch. No, that's just...
That's just deflection.
That's right. That's just deflection. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which, and, you know, anybody that DM me that, if we're friends, you know, I'm not calling you out because I'm mad at you or anything, but that was like a pretty common argument that I received from people. So, if, you know, I don't want you to think I'm upset at you for saying that if you did, but that is how I would fix it.
Yes. Right.
That's my answer.
I mean, I think going into the tail end of 2020, 2021, as we transition into the new year, the farther we go into this hellscape, I'm hoping that we just alienate as many of our listeners as possible, you know? Because, like, phase 1 was get the podcast going. Phase 2 is get more listeners. And then phase 3, fuck y'all.
Yeah, right. Well, no. Phase 3 is we get the Patreon money.
Oh, shit. I just skipped that.
Yeah, we stack up our Patreon dollars to where we can ride off into the sunset as pure venture capitalists.
Hell yeah.
From there on out. No, so I mean, I don't really have anything else to say about the Ignatz Awards. I sincerely, the one thing I want people to take away from this is that I am not shit-talking anybody that won. I respect everybody that won. I'm just shit-talking the process. I'm shit-talking the road that was taken to get there.
Damn.
So, other comics news. This isn't news. I just wanted to comment on how absurd this is. I went to the comic shop to pick up some books this week, and I saw the new X of Swords event is out. And if anybody doesn't know, X of Swords is a new X-Men storyline where they gave every X-Men a sword.
No. Dude, no, that's not real.
Yeah, everybody has a sword. I'm sure there's something deeper than that to it, but the promotional art is just every X-Men with the sword, including Wolverine, who already has fucking 6 swords that come out of his hand, technically.
Oh, fuck me. That's hilarious.
I'm sure there's like some depth to it, because what I really wanted to comment here is there's a banner that goes across each issue, because in true Marvel fashion, I guess DC does this too, but I feel like it's more prevalent with Marvel because they have more titles. This story arc is running across like fucking 5 different X-Men books. So they've got a banner across each one that says X of Swords part, whatever part that is, of 22. X-Men fans have 22 issues of every X-Men having a sword to look forward to, which is fucking absurd. But it might be fucking awesome. I don't know. I mean, because in a way, that concept, it's like, hey, we have nothing else to fucking do. Let's just give them all swords. You know, that could be kind of tight, I guess. But I mean, there's probably more depth to it than that. I'm just understanding this from a very surface level and with the solicitation materials. And I don't really plan on diving any deeper than that.
Did Marvel hire Drill to write this? I don't understand. You know, like, this just sounds like a shitpost. This doesn't sound real.
It sounds like something that somebody would pitch that would never get accepted. But, you know, here we are. I'm sure Hickman's behind it, because Hickman did the whole X-Men relaunch. So it all spins out of whatever the fuck he did. I'm guessing. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be sick
What's that?
if like Wolverine had like a sword, but the sword had like 3 blades coming out of the sword.
So Raphael's daggers, but giant?
Yeah, like giant size, but they're swords. And he's holding them. He's holding one in each hand, and he also has his claws out. And then each claw has a sword too. Yeah, that'd be dope as fuck. Donny Cates, get on that shit right now.
Yeah, Donny Cates, quit Venom.
The more I think about it, the more I approve this swords deal. Because I think we're at that point in society where we should just make these books as dumb as fucking possible.
Yeah, like me personally, I'm like, man, what a dumb fucking idea. But then I think about like what Ramon would think about it, and Ramon would just think that shit's off the chain.
Yeah, what would Ramon think?
Yeah, Ramon's probably trying to get back in at Marvel to draw some Exa swords.
This is
He's
our
probably
new
gonna roast
segment.
my ass for saying that. Yeah.
Our new segment is What Would Ramon Do?
Yeah. Other news.
Yeah, okay. So Jay Gonzo, who's an amazing artist, a really, really cool dude. Met him at Heroes years ago. He's been working on a comic for, I want to say, the last 4 or 5 years, maybe longer. I'm not 100% sure about the timeline. I just know he's been doing it for a fucking long time. So he has a title called La Mano del Destino, and it is a Lucha Libre comic that he's been doing. Currently, he's running a Kickstarter to make his 6-issue series into a trade paperback, and it will also be bilingual. I have a couple of the single issues because we often trade work anytime we see each other or cross paths at a show. And I mean, they're beautiful, like extremely well designed. Just the guy has an eye for this stuff. I mean, that was his job professionally for years, so that makes sense. He also has a different reward tiers, one of which includes a professional Lucha Libre mask. So you can actually buy the same mask that the main character wears, and it's actually a pro-grade, like, traditional ring-ready mask, the kind that actual
Sick.
Lucha Libre wrestlers wear in the ring. So that's pretty cool, but it'll cost you an easy $200 for that, which is legitimate because...
I mean, you're doing a low print run at that point because that's for like hardcore collectors at that price range, so...
Yes, and also just, making masks, like professional grade masks, those things cost like $200, $300, sometimes $400. They're not cheap.
Right.
And these are going to be
for sure.
done by a professional mask maker. You know, they're nothing like the masks that you can buy at like a con or any of those things. It's meant to be worn by an actual wrestler. So they're pretty tough and also badass. I think everyone should wear a Lucha Libre mask at some point in their life. Do you have a mask?
I bought like a purple bootleg Rey Mysterio mask when I was like 12, and that's the only one I've ever owned.
Okay.
Yeah, and I lost it a long time ago. But it wasn't super nice or anything like that. Like it was, I think it cost like $15.
Okay, so
it was definitely...
Yeah, you got what's called a fan mask then.
Yeah.
So
nothing crazy.
Yeah. If you go to Mexico City, there's vendors just selling.
Carts that sell them, right?
Yeah, they're just selling stuff like shirts and whatnot. They also sell masks, and there's different grades of masks. And the most common one is the fan mask. And these are meant to be purchased by fans to hold and kind of wave or whatever during the matches. But those are, they're meant to be cheap. They're meant to be mass produced. So they're very low quality. They're not meant to be really worn. I mean, you can wear them, but it's going to be kind of not comfortable.
Yeah.
And then the pro grade masks, these are like, I don't know why we're just going into masks now. I'm sorry. I just realized, like, what the fuck are we talking about right now? Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make here is go support this Kickstarter because it's going to be an amazing book. You can follow Jay Gonzo on Instagram at JayGonzoArt. And the book, again, is called La Mano del Destino. And it's
Is that Jay Gonzo or
just the letter J? Yeah, just the letter
Okay.
J. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, go check that out. Support the book. It's going to be beautiful.
Hell yeah. All right. So the only other news that I had, Lumberjanes is ending, apparently. The only relation that I have to that book, because it's not for me, is that SPX, the creator of Lumberjanes, bought a manga tote bag from me and followed me on Instagram. And I remember being bored on my phone and trying to go look at their profile from my notifications, and they had unfollowed me because I did not follow them back within a few hours. So good riddance, Lumberjanes. You had a hell of a run.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever read an issue of Lumberjanes. I don't know. Like, obviously, we're not the target demographic for that.
Yeah. Isn't Boom putting that out? Or is it Oni?
I think it's Boom.
Yeah. I wonder if
it was pretty much
then.
their flagship title for a while.
So they're probably able to pay like $70 a page on that.
And actually pay it.
But the artists and writers still have to split it with the inker and colors as well.
Yeah. And that's before taxes.
Yeah.
So, good luck.
Making a cool $12.50 a page. after you split it.
Hell yeah, the boom way.
Yeah, shout out to Lumberjanes for, fighting for artist equality like that, though. Making sure that we split everything. I don't even know. Actually, I'm slandering there. I don't know what the fuck is going on there.
Yeah, so I mean, there's an audience for it. I do know a lot of people that do enjoy the book, and I'm sure they're either indifferent or sad. I don't know. I don't know anything about the book, honestly.
It's about like Girl Scout troops, I think.
I thought it was about lumberjacks who are women.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense with the title, Lumberjanes.
But I could be wrong.
No, that's me looking at the cover, and I was like, I don't know why I thought Girl Scouts.
I mean, I genuinely don't know what the book is, but it is extremely popular, and like I said, it was Boom's flagship title for a while, because it was the only original title that they were releasing regularly that was selling, and then everything else is pretty much either stuff that lasts for a handful of issues or it's licensed bullshit. So I don't know what Boom's going to do when this book is over is what my main point is.
They've got a lot of money from the Keanu Kickstarter.
Oh,
so
that's right.
They'll be all right. They'll be all right.
Keanu
Their
James.
artists won't be, but
Yeah.
Oh, dude, you know what? Lumberjanes is not ending.
God damn it.
Boom Studios dishes on first Lumberjanes event, the end of summer. So it looks like their next event is the end of summer. So Lumberjanes is not ending, but
I have to cut all that out now. God damn it.
No, leave it in. Leave it in. We love to be fake news on the Gutter Boys podcast.
That's true.
Or wait, no. Hang on. Here's another article. Lumberjanes to end in December.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So keep it in.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
Yeah, a one shot. That's the issue's grand finale. Okay.
Listeners, if you have anything that you think we should cover in future episodes, blah, 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 just send it to us, please. Just DM us.
Yeah, if you...
Email
for
us.
real. Email us at gutterboyspodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions or news articles or anything you want us to bring up. Eventually, we have a few guests in the can, but I think JB and I might do a Classico episode where it's just the two of us, and we're going to... All those questions that fell in between the cracks, I would like to answer those.
Yeah, we got a couple sitting in the emails. So.
Yeah, and I got a couple in the DMs as well that I've just missed, or, they weren't necessarily for our guests that we were having.
Right.
So you can ask us questions on social media at GutterBoysPod on Instagram and Twitter, and gutterboyspodcast@gmail.com. Any kind of interesting news article, feel free to send it to us, even if it's like a shit post. We like those too.
Yeah. Also, my Venmo is at Mortkrimp Jr. So
yeah,
if you've read a Craig Thompson book, you owe me money, sis.
Yeah, and JB also does all the hard lifting on this show. So if you want to show some appreciation to JB, you can DM him a donation at Mort Crimp Jr. on Venmo.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, weed ain't free, bro.
Yeah, no, it ain't.
But yeah, Patrick Dean, he's an amazing artist. His new book, Eddie's Week, is going to be available by Birdcage Bottom Books. Believe it should be hitting this month, actually. So if you haven't seen his work, you should go pick up a copy because it is awesome.
Yeah, I bought it. I think Patrick listens to this show. I know he interacts with our stuff on social media sometimes. But I don't even know what the book is about. I hate to say that, but I'm just wanting to be surprised. I just ordered it, blindly. So I'm looking forward to it, though, because I like Patrick's work. I've seen it over the years, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that coming in the mail.
Yes. And also, I didn't realize this, Birdcage Bottom Books also released Sweaty Palms Anthologies Volumes 1 and 2. Volume 2, of course, got nominated for the Rignots, and... sorry. And so, yeah, you should go check that out. It's got a lot of artists in there. And it's just, it's an anthology. It's got a collection of series. You know what an anthology is. If you're listening to this, you know what it is. I'm going to stop explaining things now. Okay.
That's all the news that I have, unless you have some news.
Okay.
Yeah, people are finally starting to like the show, so we're trying to end it.
Yeah, we don't like that. We don't like it when people like us. And that kind of detracts from our brand,
Yeah, for real. We finally succeeded in Jim Rugg unfollowing both of us.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, if we can get Jim Rugg to not like us, we can get anyone to not like us.
Yeah, so Jim, I just want to say, I know you're not listening, and I know Ed's in your ear, which is probably why you unfollowed us. I still respect you and your art, not to sound like a cuck here. Any ill will was directed at the asshat on your show and not you. So, if you want to come back and, be nice to me one day, I'll accept it. Please, another Street Angel drawing, sir, please.
Oh my god.
So yeah, I guess now it's just fuck cartoonist kayfabe.
Well, that was kind of how it was to begin with.
Yeah.
It just so happened that we would silently not include Jim in that. And we still don't. Just, for the record, I think Jim is an amazing
I like
dude.
Jim. Yeah.
He's a great artist. He doesn't slide in fucking girls' DMs being a weirdo.
Yep. I can't wait till Pisker gets fucking canceled, man. It's only a matter of time from some shit I've seen. But,
we've gotten some... it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. But...
Because he's comic famous, and what does that mean?
Nothing. And I just want to say that if you're listening to this, you are listening to the premier comics podcast. The Gutter Boys podcast. We
like to keep it breezy on the Gutter Boys. If you know what I mean.
It's kind of funny. I don't even know if we should leave this on because I got Katie's new book in the mail.
Uh-huh.
And she thanks Cartoonist Kayfabe in the back of it. So,
she loves Jim.
Yeah. So, Katie, I'm really sorry for the slander.
A part of me thinks she likes the slander. Like, a part of me thinks, she seems kind of mischievous, not in like a bad, ill will way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think the discourse is entertaining.
Yeah.
No, but a lot of people, it's kind of funny because, in the DMs for the show now, people will shit on Cartoonist Kayfabe and, send it my way or to the show. And it's kind of funny that, just us dunking on Pisker and having a couple tweets pop off showed people there was an alternative to that show. And I feel like there's some listeners that we've gotten that just hate that show so much that they listen to ours. I don't know. It's just kind of funny that we're the alternative, I guess. We're the AEW of comics, man.
We're the QAnon of comics podcasts. Look, we're trying to take down the deep state that is Ed Pisker.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. I did find out from a user that he lived in his parents' basement until he was in his 30s, so that makes sense. That adds up.
Damn, that is a flex.
Yeah, love to see that. But yeah, so Mr. Pisker, if you're listening to this, it's still fuck you every day.
Oh boy. I forget even why. How did this all start? Do you know? I
mean, you would tweet about him using the N-word.
Which I thought was funny. Just to be clear, every complaint that I have about Ed Pisker, 100% it's because I think he's funny.
I don't think he's funny. I think that's giving him too much credit. I think he's like a clown and he's funny to laugh at. Anyway, Cartoonist Kayfabe fears Gutter Boys is what it boils down to. Jim, we are open to peace talks between you only.
Yeah, Ed, we need the other N-word, NATO.
Alrighty, so I know we already said this, but if you want to participate, email us or, hit us up on social media. Please rate and review our show. I think that's something that would be really cool, so that way people can find us.
0 stars.
Yeah, 0 stars is cool. Whatever you want to rate us, just be fair. If you're a Cartoonist Kayfabe incel and you hear this and you want to tank our rating, go for it. But, rate and review us on your preferred podcast platform.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Katie Skelly. So stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
Come with us if you dare into a twilight world of unspeakable horror.
You must die. Everybody must die.
Sample, if you dare, the deadly passion of the vampire lovers. The vampire lovers. Perverted creatures of the night find their victims everywhere. The unsuspecting merrymakers in glittering ballrooms with their young and tender throats. The sleeping beauties whose troubled dreams turn into real, terrifying nightmares.
It was a cat! A huge cat!
For God's sake, save her!
quest for the vampire lovers. No escape till their evil hearts are stilled for all eternity. If one remains, yes, even one, there will be thousands more. Beware. Beware the cold caress, the kiss that kills. Beware the vampire lovers.
From Fantagraphics, a beautiful hardcover edition of Maids by Katie Skelly. Ripped from the headlines, the true story of the Papin sisters told by one of underground comics' most exciting talents. Both a true crime saga and an allegory for societal collapse. Order now.
Now, back to our program.
And welcome back to another episode of Gutter Boys. Coming back after the break with special guest Katie Skelly. Katie is a cartoonist that is currently based in Brooklyn. Is that right still, by the way?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, perfect. She is currently hot on the tails of her release of a new comic, Maids, which is going to be put out by Fantagraphics on October 13th of this year. Some previous work includes Nurse Nurse, Operation Margarine, Twisted Romance, the Trash Twins podcast, and the Bad Girl Tarot deck. So how you doing today, Katie?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. How are you guys?
Yeah, I'm good. All things considered. I feel like everything's just kind of the same, but,
Yep. I'm alive, so that's about as much as I can ask for right now. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there. I've been in Brooklyn since quarantine started here in March, and I actually just got into Manhattan yesterday for the first time in like 3 months. It was really surreal. It was really strange. But it's been good. I mean, Brooklyn, we're hanging in there. It's like businesses are starting to reopen. Yeah, in a lot of ways, it feels like it didn't really change in my neighborhood that much, which is good. But yeah, just kind of seeing the bigger impact that this has had on Manhattan the other day was really, really strange. So strange times.
Was it kind of like deserted and everything like that compared to what it usually looks like?
Yeah, it was really odd because I kind of had this marathon day yesterday where I walked over the Brooklyn Bridge and I walked through Tribeca and Chinatown, Little Italy, all the way up to Union Square just because I was like, there's nobody on the street. This is kind of nice. And, just normally, right around City Hall or Tribeca, it's kind of quiet on the weekends anyway. There's not a whole lot going on, but everything was just boarded up and there was nobody even on the sidewalks. There was barely any traffic. It was really, really odd. And then, walking through Soho, that's the neighborhood that I work in under normal circumstances, and seeing all these businesses that I used to go to just either being closed or, having signs up we're temporarily closed, don't know when we're coming back, or they were boarded up or, damaged otherwise. It was just really, really weird. It felt like walking through a zombie movie a little bit.
And you've been in New York for quite a while now, right?
Yeah, February it'll be 13 years.
Okay, and where were you from originally?
I'm originally from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I lived there until, I was 18, and then I went to college at Syracuse University, so I was there for 4 years, and then I came back to Pennsylvania for 6 or 7 months after college, got a job, saved up, and then I got a job in New York, and I've been here ever since.
So were you working on comics before college, or was that something that you got into, while attending school?
I was working on them in high school for sure. I don't have a great memory of what they were about. I know with 100% certainty that they were embarrassing, but I don't know exactly why. I couldn't put my finger on it. I just know vaguely, I feel dread thinking about them. And then in college, I was working on strips for the school newspaper, which published newsprint newspaper like daily, which is kind of unusual for universities.
Yeah.
It was a big communications school, so they were just desperate for content. And I was like, oh, I've got it for you. And I was just doing these bizarre, like disgusting strips that, yeah, they weren't particularly funny, and they also kind of weren't disgusting enough, but they needed me, and, you know, I was happy to deliver.
So were you doing 5 days a week, or was it just kind of whenever you had a strip, you'd send it in?
Yeah, pretty much whenever I had something, whenever I was, you know, ready to turn something in. And, you know, it was like I didn't have, you know, like a computer. I didn't have Photoshop. It was like I would have to go to like the office and like drop it off, you know, and then like go pick them up in like a couple of weeks. And yeah, it was really old school. It was fun though. I remember I really liked it. Like I felt really, the first time something got published, I was like, oh my God, like I've made it. Like it's not going to get any better than this. So yeah. And then after college is when I started doing like mini comics and printing things on my own and going to shows. That wasn't really a huge part of my life until after college.
So where did you get introduced to that world at? Were you reading comics, like mini comics and stuff like that? And then you decided to make, I know you were doing the strips for the university, but as far as like taking that next step, because I mean, usually I feel like the trajectory is like, you know, you make mini comics and then you might end up in a newspaper or something. So like, where did you make that jump?
That's a really good question. I feel like I just had friends that were doing it. I think that's right. I had friends that were like putting mini comics together and like going to SBX. And I think I just like maybe my junior or senior year, like hitched a ride with them and went to SBX back when it was like in Bethesda proper. It was in a different hotel than the one that it's been in the last few years. But yeah, and I just remember like walking the floor and I was like, this is so wacky. Like I was just like, who are all these people like selling, you know, Xeroxed like folded pieces of paper with like staples in them. And I thought it was really cool. And, you know, when I was in high school, I was like really into like going to the record store and like buying zines. And I was really into going to the comic book store and like seeing things that were self-published. But it wasn't really until then that I like put two and two together. And I was like, oh, this is something that I could do as well.
And was the first thing that you started working on, like mini comics wise, was it the Nurse stuff?
Yeah, it was. Some of the very first pages in the Nurse collection are like some of the very first pages of comics that I drew like that. So it was really something that I learned along the way, you know, as I was making it. And I feel really lucky that, you know, something that was so experimental and kind of like was me working out a style became a book. You know, I still feel really lucky for that.
Mm-hmm. And then, so that was self-published originally, and then it got picked up by Sparkplug. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was printing Nurse like right when I first moved to New York, and I did one issue and people liked it. And then I was like, oh, this is so cool. Well, now I have to do a second issue. And so then I did that and it just kept growing and growing. And, you know, I had my like favorite Kinkos like all over Manhattan that I would go to make different copies of. You know, I was like, I know that like this machine, like this Kinko's smudge, or like if I need to do anything in color, like this one is going to like work really well. I was just always in like Kinko's and Staples. And, you know, the mini comics were small. So I was stapling them all myself. I was trimming them all myself. And it got up to 7 issues and it became this like juggernaut that was like taking over my life. I was nothing but just like paper cuts and like trying to send things out media mail. And it feels so wild. It really wasn't that long ago, but the way that I, you know, work now and like distribute comics now is so completely different.
Well, and I kind of, you know, your new book that's coming out, Maids, you were originally doing that as like floppies. I think you put out 4 issues that way. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I did 4. But, you know, I have like a vendor that I use and, you know, I pay enough money that I don't have to, you know, run back and forth to a Kinko's all the time, which is, you know, pretty good. That's a good way to like level up your life, I would say.
Are you mailing that stuff out yourself still, or is somebody taking over for that as well?
I still do all of it. Anything, if you buy a mini comic from me, or if you buy, well, not necessarily a tarot deck because I have stockists and stuff for that now, but if you buy any like mini comic, that comes from me. You know, like I don't really have stores that carry them. Yeah, it's still me.
Yeah, because I noticed like I'd ordered a couple issues of Maids from you, and I know that you put like the handwritten note with them, so that's why I was asking. I was like, I didn't know if you were just stockpiling those and giving them to a distributor, or if you were actually still handling the mail. So yeah.
I'm keeping the post office in business. Like I don't think they have anything to worry about. I'm really handling it, so I think they'll be fine.
Awesome. So shortly after Nurse, you ended up over at AdHouse with the Operation Margarine book. Is that right, timeline-wise?
Yeah. Nurse was 2012, and then Operation Margarine was 2014.
2012, that's like the Tumblr heyday. Were you posting a lot of your comics on Tumblr? Is that how you were getting that stuff out there?
Oh my God, that was when Tumblr was really poppin'. That was when you would see the wildest shit. And I did get really good traction from Tumblr, posting my stuff back then. And, Operation Margarine really kind of took off the moment that somebody took a crop from one of the pages. That's the character Bonbon. She's walking in the rain and smoking, and she's saying, fuck this and fuck you. Mm-hmm. And somebody posted it, and I saw it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I reblogged it, and now it's 100,000 likes and shares and stuff later. And it just kind of seeped its way into people's brains that saw it, that was a really cool moment. I don't know that is something that's even close to replicating now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You can't really do that on Instagram. You can't go quote unquote viral in the same sense that you could on Tumblr, I feel like.
I mean, you could go viral on Instagram, but it would be in a way that you really wouldn't want to. You know what I mean?
Right,
it would be
right.
It would be you're the main character for the day, and nobody wants to be that.
Yeah, it's for as many cartoonists that have moved over to Instagram, it doesn't feel like the same kind of place as a Tumblr did.
Yeah.
It just seems like comics were kind of running Tumblr for a while.
Yeah, I think so. I kind of miss it, but at the same time, it did always have this weirdly familiar, overly familiar edge to it, where I was always getting these bizarre, anonymous questions in my inbox and stuff like that. And I was just I don't, what the hell? I'm just drawing stuff and posting it. I don't really need to get to know anybody that well,
Right. So whenever you did move over to AdHouse, was that with Operation Margarine, was that something you pitched over to Chris over there, or is that something that he approached you about?
I pitched it to Chris. Nurse came out, and I was I want to do the next thing, and I want to do another black and white comic, and I really loved the way that Chris Pitzer designed. I still love it, but I loved the way AdHouse Books looked. The Lamar Abrams books I really loved. I loved Jim Rugg's books and Tom Scioli's books over there, and I approached him, and I think he just was kind of show me. I told him the idea, and he was show me, I think, 20 pages or so. And I did. And I remember he we were both doing a show in Philadelphia, and he came over with a contract with the AdHouse, header, insignalia on it and stuff. And I signed it, and I felt very wow, look at me.
Yeah, no, for sure.
We're doing business. That was really cool. But yeah, and I loved working with Chris. I think he's so cool. I still think he's so cool. And, I'm really happy that AdHouse is still going strong.
Yeah, I love them as a publisher, and, they always put out quality books. Now, both of those books, if I'm correct, I think they're both out of print. Is that right?
Yes. Nurse is out of print. I still have a few copies, so I don't feel as desperate about it as I do as Operation Margarine, which I only have one copy of. Mm-hmm. But Operation Margarine sold out, and then we didn't reprint it. And then Nurse just kind of I don't know, got sort of lost in distribution almost. I feel there are still tons of copies out there that we don't really know about, and I'm okay with it. At this point, I'm just sort of I'm happy that I did those books, but I don't really look back on them all that much,
So no plans to reprint or, give those books a second life?
I could, I could probably talk to Eric Reynolds about it at Fantagraphics and see if he would want them. But I just feel so happy with what I'm doing now that I don't really think about it, and those books were really important for me to figure out what I was doing, but they don't feel really true expressions of what I'm doing now feels a lot truer. And so I've just kind of let those two go, and I also think it's kind of cute when people collect them and they find it and it's really expensive, and I'm yeah, it's worth it. And it's I don't know if it really is.
Something else that you were doing, and actually the Fantagraphics book, the agency, you were doing a lot of online comics that were published. I have it written down. Was it Slutist, I think? Slutist.com?
Yeah. Mm-hmm,
and then I know you were printing those as well, because I remember ordering a couple from you. I know the one that you did with Sarah Horrocks. So with the agency, was it always a plan to collect those webcomics into one book?
No, it didn't really occur to me until I think right when My Pretty Vampire was coming out, because I always have this urge to like when something is coming out, I'm like, oh, I want to figure out the next thing so badly, because you have that awkward few months where it's just this like existential slog of like, I don't know what I'm doing, like nothing is going on. And so it was like right after My Pretty Vampire, and I was like, Eric, I have all of these like sex comics that I was doing for, 4 or 5 years. Would you be interested in printing those like as part of the Fantagraphics imprint line? And he was like, sure. So yeah, it worked out that way. But my intention with those was always to kind of just like publish them through Slutist and kind of let them live online. But I'm really happy with them in print now.
Yeah. And did you print the majority of them as zines?
Let me think. Agent 8, I did a collection. Agent 9, I did a collection. And then 73, I did a collection. I don't think that I did Agent 10.
Okay.
That one wasn't in print. But yeah, they all came out also as mini comics too. And again, those were just kind of like fun, almost not filler, but just something else that I could have like at a table if I was doing a show. I could be like, oh, I have these like fun ones too.
Absolutely. So actually, I wanted to ask about that. You mentioned like the Fantagraphics imprint, because this was actually published under Fantagraphics Underground, and it has like a different logo. Is this kind of like their new like Eros thing? Like is that kind of what they're doing there?
I mean, I don't know if you could ever really do a new Eros. Because,
right.
But I think it's as close as possible to that. And I think the idea was to have something that was going to be a little bit more raw. Again, this is all sort of their machinations. I don't know that I can really 100% speak to their vision for it, but it just kind of seemed like a way to print things that didn't necessarily have to have the visual heft of like a proper Fantagraphics book, and I was happy with that, because my intention with the agency, I wasn't really going 100% in those comics. I was having fun. I was like just happy trying to publish for web and, throw things at the wall and see what stuck. And so I was just like, yeah, I would like to do something that's going to be, kind of like magazine format, something that would look like you would have it, stashed under your bed or something. It doesn't necessarily have to be something you're going to like put out on your, coffee table or whatever. And so I was happy with, that sort of lo-fi print quality that we did on that one.
Yeah, I think they turned out really nice. And I think your colors that you use, because from what I've seen, you do your inks like, traditional. And then I think you color in Photoshop. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
With a lot of those agency books, 73, I know for sure, that was marker. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was using watercolor pen, but I wasn't like wetting the brushes at all. So it was really just like heavy pigment, really difficult to spread around. And so that's how you got that kind of like scratchy color. And it's funny because the pages themselves, the color looks a lot more fluid, but the scans, like it really washed everything out. And I was like, this looks so much cooler. Like I like how much harsher this looks. So yeah, I was really pleased with that one.
Awesome. So Agent 73 particularly, and I kind of wanted to bring this up because I'm also a fan of theirs as well. That was a collaboration with Sarah Horrocks, and you actually did a podcast with Sarah as well called Trash Twins. So you all have kind of been collaborators for a while. I don't know so much anymore. I know that you all were tabling next to each other at SPX last year, but do you all have any more projects in the works together, or?
Nothing at the moment. It's always really good to see Sarah. And like, I'm sure you guys know, like when you're doing a podcast, you're like so involved in each other's brains, and like, it's so much work, and it's such a commitment. And I think that we did a really good run with what we wanted to do. And I think, ultimately both of us are cartoonists and we just want to work on comics, and it was a fun thing to do. And I don't think that we're going to have anything in the future necessarily like a podcast, but I'm always open to working on comics with her, like if she ever wants to, or I would love to write something for her because I think her style is really cool. She's such a chameleon. So yeah, nothing like at the moment, but I never say never, because I'm proven wrong like literally all the time.
So your new book, Maids, we were kind of talking about it earlier. You started serializing it, and now the complete book is coming out next month in October. Was it always something that you planned on serializing partially and then taking over in full book form to Fantagraphics, or were you planning on doing it as floppies and then they just picked it up? Why did you stop doing it as a serialization and just move it over to a book?
Well, the plan was always, I really like working in this model where I'll put issues out as I'm working on the book in its entirety, right? Because it's a way to kind of mark progress for me. It's a way to make sure that I get things done. And I like going out to shows and selling mini comics to kind of start getting the full book into people's consciousness. You know, like I don't like the idea of like being tucked away for 2 years and then suddenly coming back out with a full graphic novel. It just feels like I like to have that time to kind of build it up, hype it, figure out what I'm really doing, you know, get a little like preliminary press on it, attention on it, you know, just to kind of like hedge my bets. But the plan was always to like stop it before the end. And that's the way that I've worked on all my comics to this point, with the exception of The Agency. All of that was just available at once online. But yeah, with Maids, I was just kind of like, I wanted to stop it when I wanted to stop it. And, you know, I had the deadline coming up and I was like, I don't want to mess around with, you know, doing mail and doing shows and all this stuff right now. I just want to focus on finishing the book. And yeah, so I stopped it at 4 and then the book has 5 and 6 in it.
This is your first venture into, if I'm not mistaken, everything else has been fiction, and this is a biography. Is that correct?
That is correct, but I did do a comic about Tanya Harding,
okay.
A short comic about Tanya Harding, but that was still kind of fictionalized or dramatized, I guess, a dramatic interpretation of Tanya Harding.
Well, I did read Maids before the show, and I'm not actually familiar with the real case. Everything I learned about the actual murders and everything that happened came from your book. Was this fictionalized at all, or is this just pretty much a straight telling?
The major facts are there and they're represented, but there are a lot of scenarios that are imagined in between the kind of big points of the case because there's still not a whole lot that we know about their daily lives. We have really no glimpses into their sort of internal mechanisms at all. Like beyond like some testimony, there's really not a lot that they have said or written that we can kind of look at. So yeah, a lot of it is, just kind of like my interpretation of, escalating tensions in the house and some of my own sort of like biographical stuff worked in there for dramatic effect just because it's, it's what I know. And the more that I was working on the story, the more I like kind of found these bizarre parallels between their lives and my life. And yeah, I would say it's like 65% true. But there's also, I don't know if anyone can really prove me wrong either. Right,
because there's just not evidence that points otherwise. So yeah. What was it about, like, this case, that made you want to make an entire, graphic novel about, these sisters and this murder, because there's a lot of things that, me personally, there's a lot of things that I'm like, oh, that'd be cool to make a comic about, but you actually, like, went off with it and ran with it. Like, was it just, like, a story that you couldn't get out of your head? Were you just completely fascinated with, like, the characters here? Like, what made you want to tell this story in comic form?
I really hate working and I don't want to do it anymore. And the way that they handled their on-the-job stress, I found really fascinating. And I think what they did was so vulgar and so intense and bizarre that I was like, you can't help but kind of put yourself, or at least I can't help but kind of put myself in their shoes and think about, if I have a really bad day at work, like, could I take somebody's eyeballs out? It just kind of stuck in my head for so long. And, I also just like personal sort of preferences for what I like to draw. I love uniforms. Like every single comic that I have is, girls in uniforms kind of doing different things. And it just called to me. And I found their relationship as sisters to be really compelling. There was just so much there. And I was like, this is a really great chance to not only explore things that I already know and love, but to really look at, how do people really get from like point A to point B? And how can someone, tap into a part of themselves that just gives way to completely insane, like, brutality?
So with a book like this, it's pretty grim subject nature-wise. Did you find yourself, ever working and getting kind of like spooked, like, during research or anything like that, where you're just like, I need to kind of take some time away from this? Like, does it ever creep you out working? Because your stuff is often, more macabre, than other comics. So like, and that's like kind of like a theme that runs through it. You had My Pretty Vampire, so is there like, like kind of going back to that question, is there any like times where you just have to like step back from the work because, it's getting a little too intense? Comics?
No, I wanted to be in it more.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved being there. Sometimes I felt like I was like, well, this is the turning point in my life where I become a recluse because I just want to talk about the girls all the time and I want to talk about the comic all the time. And, I kind of want to like test my friends and the people around me and see, if I bring up this case, do they know what it means? Like, what's the sort of general familiarity with the case? Because that kind of goes into how you write it too, And yeah, I loved it. I loved being in there. I don't know, we'll see in a couple years if that was a good thing or a bad thing for me. I think it kind of takes me a long time to internalize and then process everything back out again after I do a story. But yeah, no, I liked it. I liked being in there. Sometimes I felt a little bit overwhelmed just because I wanted to not do justice to the girls necessarily, but I didn't want to make something that was going to be, you were going to be overly sympathetic with them.
Mm-hmm.
It was important to make sure that they were like victimized just as much as they were victimizing others.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure that there was a balance. So sometimes that was hard, because it was actually harder for me to like empathize with the family that they worked for.
Right.
And I feel like that was a way for me to kind of sublimate all of my working life rage into one place. So I'm doing great, I think. I think we're gonna be fine.
Hell yeah. So what's like let's kind of talk about your process a little. What's like a day? Do you make time for comics? I know earlier you kind of alluded to working in another part of town. Are you full time with, cartooning and comics and art, or do you still work a job?
Yeah, I still work. I work a full-time job. I have since 2008, different jobs. The job that I'm in, I will have been in for 5 years coming up soon. But, quarantine is the first time that I have been able to work remotely ever in my life. And it's been so good for me. It's kind of a shame because everything else is going to shit, but this is the one thing that's like finally clicking and finally working. And so I'm hoping that I'll be able to maintain that long term, but it really kind of depends on what's going on. And, I finished Maids right as lockdown was happening. Mm-hmm. It was literally like the weekend before. It was like I turned in Maids and then I was getting ready to like go out with my girlfriends and get drunk the following weekend to like celebrate. Because, I'd been kind of quarantined to that point anyway, because I was home working on the book all the time.
Right.
And then sure enough, it was like the bars were closed. So I'm still waiting to like have that party. I'm hoping that it'll come around soon. But yeah, my pre sort of COVID schedule would be I would wake up at like 5 or 6 in the morning and pencil or ink until, 8:30 or so. And then I would have to go to work. And then I would get home from work around 6 and then I would get back to work and then I would work weekends and, just pretty much doing that until the book was done.
Hell yeah. So when you're making a book, like, are you one of those people that like doesn't look at comics at all when you're working on comics, or do you look at comics while you're working on comics?
It depends. This one, I didn't really have a strong comic vocabulary that I was like going back and referencing. Mm-hmm. Like with the agency or My Pretty Vampire, it was like, oh, I can always go back and look at Craypax, or I can always go back and look at, I don't know, Pellart or Leroy Neiman or, any number of artists. And I was just kind of like, oh, I have the sort of visual vocabulary all around me. But for Maids, it was just kind of me and the story. And I think that was a really good way to work. So yeah, I wasn't looking at too many comics on this one.
I also wanted to touch base on your exhibit. You had an exhibit that was in Belfast last year called Skelly World. How did that come to be? I mean, that's like any artist's, dream come true, is to be able to exhibit their work. And not only did you get to exhibit your work, but you got to exhibit it overseas. So do you have like a strong, following over in Europe, or how'd that all come together?
Let's see. I was in a couple of group shows with the curator put together by the curator at Queen's University Belfast. His name is Ben Crothers. And, I'd done a few talks with him here in New York when he would come over here. And, he's really great to work with. And I think, let's see, maybe like winter of 2018, we started talking about doing a solo show. And I was of course like so game and so down for it. And yeah, it was just kind of like taking all of the following spring and figuring out, what we want to exhibit, how we want to do it. Cause it's kind of an unusual show too, because it's, comic pages and there's not necessarily a whole lot of other work that I do. You know, I have one or two like other things. I have some video work. I have, you know, some screen printing work, but otherwise it was all comics. And so, yeah, he did a really brilliant job, you know, incorporating books into the exhibition design and incorporating pages and like, you know, letting me kind of have my own installations and like paint on the gallery walls myself, you know. So I was so pleased with that show. And it was kind of this really funny moment of like opening night. I was so happy and so excited. And I was like, I'm not going to see anyone that I really know here.
Right.
You know, like I kind of, you know, like made, you know, acquaintances and stuff there. And I was, you know, everyone was really friendly and really hospitable. And they were just so fantastic. But it was still this very surreal moment of like, yeah, like I got this thing. I really put this together. I'm so pleased. And I was like, everyone is a stranger, basically. Huh.
So you actually spent, like, did you spend a couple weeks over there, or was it just like, were you there for the opening and the preparation of it?
I was there for a week. They brought me over, which was really great, and put me up. And I was there for installation. And then I was, you know, doing on-site painting. And then they had me doing a few talks. And then I would have a few, like, you know, afternoons to myself. And I got to go out, like, to the countryside and go on tours and go to, like, the Giant's Causeway and, like, go see that big street with all the like gnarled trees that's always on Game of Thrones. And like, I don't watch it. So I was like, this looks really cool. And like, everyone's really excited about this. And I was like, I'm excited about this too. I don't know like what it means like in the context of that show, but it was really, really gorgeous. And yeah, I was so pleased to be there. I had a great time.
Awesome. So one other thing that I wanted to talk about was the Bad Girl Tarot deck. If I'm not, have you done 2 of those?
I did a tarot deck in 2018 and it just came out like a couple days ago. I did an oracle deck as well, which is kind of just like a bit of like a more focused tarot deck. And, you know, tarot runs on like a particular coda, a particular language. It's 78 cards. It's major and minor arcana. Oracle decks are a lot more free form. So that was me kind of developing my own divination tool, which was really cool.
So when you do something like that, are you, like, you know, with the tarot deck specifically, you were just doing your own versions of the existing deck. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the new one, the Oracle deck, was more so, you know, you mentioned creating your own divination. So you had more freedom there and you were kind of, was it like lore and whatnot that you were writing? Like, what's the process like there?
It was me sitting down and writing out a list of every single archetype of like bad girls, bad women in film and literature and comics that I really love and figuring out if I could write like text around them that might be used to help, you know, clarify like a tarot reading. And it was really cool. And the things that I'm really interested in are, you know, very specific tropes from like very specific kinds of films, like a final girl, like from slasher films, you know, sort of the like virginal girl that is, you know, spared, but lives to tell the tale of the slasher. And so I have a final girl in the deck. And then I have like Demon Mother, which is like a Rosemary's Baby kind of thing. Like there were just so many really great tropes that I was like, these are so wonderful and they would fit in really well to like help clarify the tarot. So let's do it. And people were really into it.
And did you crowdfund? I know you crowdfunded the first one. Did you crowdfund the second one?
I did, yeah. It ended in July.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's probably a good feeling to have 2 successful campaigns. I haven't done a Kickstarter yet, but I'm going to be doing one soon, and I'm just so fucking nervous about it.
Oh, nice. I'm sure you'll do fine. It's really like I was really surprised by how supportive and how interested people were in the projects, you know, because you kind of think about it and you're like, well, doesn't everybody kind of have, you know, like enough tarot decks or like enough oracle decks? And, you know, I think just kind of differentiating it, like through all the work that I've done otherwise in comics, like that really helped make these things stand out. So it wasn't just something that was like going to appeal to people who liked my comics, but it was going to have a broad appeal to people who just like tarot. Like that was a really good feeling.
Right. So do you do tarot readings for your friends and other people?
I do them for myself. My friend Chelsea, who consulted on the Bad Girl Tarot deck, is like a professional reader and she's really good. And so I don't tend to read her or like my other friends because she would just school me like so hard that I was like, I'm not going to embarrass myself. But I do like doing readings. I've done them like on Instagram Live and stuff like that. And, you know, it's really fun. It's really cute. And I think it's just a nice way to like apply your art to something that can still be like a linear narrative, but it doesn't have to be comics.
Right. So whenever you're doing like a tarot reading on live, are you using your own deck?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like an
hell
infomercial.
yeah, what a flex.
Yeah, I'm like Walter Mercado. I'm like, I have a whole like little cottage industry. It's very cute. But yeah, I love the tarot stuff so much. And I'm so pleased that like, you know, the tarot deck is like in its 5th printing now. And I'm just so happy that people have found it and they like using it. And, you know, it's like kind of still going strong. And that's another thing that's like, it's still completely like independently distributed. You know, like I've had like assistants, you know, like staff that I like pay, you know, to help me like promote the deck and like sell it and like ship orders and stuff. And that was really, really cool too. That was the first time, I will say with Kickstarter, that was the first time that I really felt like, oh, I have total control over the way that my money is spent and the way that I'm kind of making money.
Right. So is it something that, you know, because if I'm not mistaken, I think you've only used Kickstarter for the decks, right? You've never done a book on Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a whole different ball game in a way. But yeah, no, I think that it's a great model, especially, you know, with someone like yourself, you already have that visibility and audience, you know, it just gauges the interest. And hearing that it's in its 5th printing is crazy. Congratulations. That's
I know. Thank you. It's so cool. And I also have a lot of stockists that are really fantastic and, you know, ordered like a ton through quarantine because they moved everything like to digital sales. And so that was a really nice thing because it kind of felt like a mutually beneficial thing for me and like the stores that I really love too.
Hell yeah. All right, so we do want to go ahead and get into questions. Let's see here. We got a couple. Real quick, before we get into questions, if you want to participate in the show, we are on social media on Twitter and Instagram at GutterBoysPod. We usually ask the questions through post and through story posts there. You can also email us at gutterboyspodcast@gmail.com. There are a lot of questions in there because we were really bad at checking email. So JB and I plan on doing an episode soon where we go through and answer the questions from the email because we kind of fell off on checking that. So apologies if you sent something there. We are going to be better about checking the email. So let's see here. First question, Katie, was for you, of course. Instagram user Thomas JC asked, where's a good place to start reading Krapex?
A good place to start reading Krapex is the first volume of the Krapex collection put out by Fantagraphics. I think it'll be...
Is that one with the monsters?
Yes, it's his horror comics. Yeah. I think it might still be easier to find than other Krapex collections that are not put out by Fantagraphics. It does have an essay by me, so I am partial to it. But it's got the goods. It has Dracula, Frankenstein. It has some really great Valentina stories. I think it's just a really good intro. There is another collection that I really like that is not Fantagraphics. It has Bianca, Venus and Furs, and Emmanuel, an Emmanuel story. That, I believe, was put out by an Italian publisher, and the title is just Bianca, Venus and Furs, Emmanuel. The last that I saw it, I believe it was still on Amazon, but there is another site called ABE Books that I really like to find the more obscure European comics. So I would recommend checking that site out.
Yeah, I've got the first 3 volumes of the big Fantagraphics books. I haven't gotten the other ones yet, but they're fantastic.
They're really great.
You have to like put them out on like a coffee table to read them. And I think that's great. I love oversized books like that. But yeah, I would recommend starting with the first volume that Fanta put out as well. JB, you want to read the second question? It looks like Instagram user Daymon.
All right, Instagram user Daymon asks, what has been the weirdest compliment you received about your art?
The weirdest compliment. I have a kind of weird story, which is that back at Comic Arts Brooklyn, back in the day, I think it was still called BCGF. That was a show that was in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. And it was kind of like a big to-do when that show started, because it was one of the first shows that was like curated, quote unquote, where, you know, you had to apply and be accepted to show there. And it was like, I think my first year that I was accepted to show there. And I was like, wowie, wow. Like, I've made it. Like, everything is like really coming up. And I was tabling and this guy came up and he was like, I think at that point I just had Nurse out and maybe like was starting on Operation Margarine. This guy comes up and he's looking at Nurse And I swear to God, he was wearing like an Oxford shirt and like the first, 2 buttons were like unbuttoned. And there was a piece of like half-cooked spaghetti that was going through the first like open button on his shirt. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like who is this? Like, he was like, gotta run, like can't finish my noodle, like gonna go back and boil it later. And I was like, hey, what's up, man? And he's like looking at Nurse like really intently. And he was like, it would appear that Michael DeForge is ripping off you. And then he just walked away. And I don't think that's true, but it was just such a weird thing. And the pasta was so like, it was so Lynchian that I was like, okay, I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. And here I am, 8 years later thinking about the pasta guy. So I hope he's well, I hope he got to eat the rest of it or, do what he was going to do. But yeah, pasta man.
So actually, this is a question from me that I wrote down that I wanted to know about. This is probably going to come off as weird, but a few years ago, I remember you tweeted out, and I remember thinking it was hysterical. You tweeted, I think you were on a book tour. It probably was for My Pretty Vampire, but you put a tweet out that said that you were in the club with Gary Panner. I just want to know what Gary Panner's like in the club.
Yeah. Oh, he's great. He was great. I love like, being out with sort of old guard cartoonists. I think it's the funniest thing in the entire world. Yeah, no, we were out. We did a talk at the Strand. And then afterwards we like went out to this like very sceney bar and Gary got chicken wings and like a bullet, I think, whiskey. And I was like, Gary is the coolest. You got to give it up for Gary. Like, for sure. He was having a good time.
Hell yeah. Alrighty, next question came from Instagram user Paul Along the Watchtower. We kind of touched on this earlier, but he asked, is Trash Twins ever going to come back?
It's something that I've definitely thought about and I've definitely talked to Sarah because I do miss podcasting and there's something about it that I feel like now is the moment to do it, but I don't know that we could necessarily do a Trash Twins format again because it was so much work all the time because we were so ambitious that we wanted to like be like, this is going to be the definitive thing about ... And that's really too high to shoot for. Like you kind of have to be more conversational and you want to be more, relevant on like a weekly basis or, even more than that. And I don't think that that's really how we approach media. I think that we really want to do the best job possible and we want to do the research and, shoot from the hip, but also know what we're talking about. So I don't know that something like that is feasible now because we both want to do comics too, we both work and on top of making comics and doing everything else. So again, I never say never, but I think if we did do something, the format would have to shift pretty dramatically. I have thought about just doing a solo podcast where I just sit and talk into a microphone, but I don't know, like Julie Klausner has a podcast where she does that and she just sounds like really cuckoo crazy sometimes. And I don't know that I'm willing to like go there. It's a great show. It's so entertaining, but it's very like, wow, man, I don't think I want to give people that much of an in into my
because it's like one thing, like, because it's one thing to have like two people because then, each person talks, but yeah, just like a stream of conscious like podcasts, like with one person. I don't really know if I listen to any like that.
Yeah. I mean, would you listen to mine?
Well, I would listen to yours, yeah. But
well, I like the 2-person thing too, because, the world kind of gets to build, like the world gets lost in the fantasy with the 2 people, right? Because it's always like one is the nice one and like one is the mean one and one does this. And you have this sort of like character that you kind of do for the show almost. I mean, I wonder if you guys have found that, like if everyone's like, oh, like, JB is the nice one or like Cam is the nice one. Because for us, it was like Katie was the nice one and Sarah was the mean one. And it's like, that could not be further from the truth.
I think that's kind of how people are with us because like nobody asks JB questions, but everybody asks me the questions. So I don't know if like I'm the approachable one.
I guess so.
But,
yeah. I'm judging.
Maybe it's because, I mean, you're a Taurus, JB is a Sagittarius. Maybe people feel more comfortable, maybe they feel like you're a little bit more grounded.
Yeah, that
they
makes
can
sense.
like approach you.
So this was a question that I forgot to pre-screen, but it's pretty simple. Instagram user K. Rochelle asks, do you think Rally's or Checkers fries are better than McDonald's fries? I do. I think Rally's have better fries than McDonald's. Do you guys have Rally's or Checkers up in New York?
We have a Checkers that is right below the M train, and every time I get off that train, I'm like, is it going to be a Checkers night? And it hasn't been so far, so I don't know if I know what their fries are.
You should try
like.
them sometime. It's probably the only good thing.
Okay.
That everything else is just like, fast food, but they do have distinct fries.
Okay.
What about you, JB? Do you think they're better than McDonald's?
Checkers for sure. I mean, I can't eat them. I'm pretty sure they use beef fat, but they definitely beat McDonald's fries. And I'm pretty sure McDonald's fries uses beef fat too, so what's their excuse?
You're right. Alrighty. JB, do you want to handle that next question from...
you gave me the... Yeah, no, okay, so this is Cam having a laugh. Because this guy's name is like 50 characters and I'm not going to be able to pronounce this right. Okay, so Instagram user, I can't pronounce this, but it starts with a vanish. They ask, you use very sparse dialogue. How do you go about telling a story visually, then rely on words?
I don't like to read comics that are huge walls of text. And so I never want to do that in my comics. I think that's really it. When I'm writing dialogue, I'll typically write a page out and then just keep cutting it as I'm lettering the page. Because I like to stick to a script, but I also don't want to miss out on anything that would come up when I'm figuring it out, like improvisationally, that might work. So I tend to just cut and cut and cut until it's like enough of the idea is there to carry you through. But I mean, ideally, I think it should all speak for itself without word balloons. That's always kind of my goal. And those are sort of like the accoutrement that make it nice, but it should say everything it needs to say in the visuals.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's the goal anyway.
Yeah, otherwise just write a book.
Yeah, write a book. I'm not trying to read, I would be picking up something else, or, I would watch a movie with subtitles. I'm not trying to really challenge myself in that way. But also it's just sort of like with the way that I work, I like things to be wide and open, and text I feel like just kind of gets in the way. And so, yeah, the more I can cut out, the better, I think.
Yeah, you're more of a draw first as opposed to like having a lot of dialogue on the page. Like you show as opposed to like telling with dialogue. I've noticed a lot.
I really try because I just don't want to see too much of my brain on the page. Something that I really like is kind of like the most important thing to me, I would say, in all of my work is getting as close a translation as what's in my mind onto the page as possible. It's impossible to do, I think, but I want to get as close to that as I humanly can. And so I find that language kind of gets in the way of that subconscious to, manifestation sort of path. So I don't know, it's not my interest. I don't really build character like that either. I would rather show you that like Christine likes to steal than have them talking about how she likes to steal. I'd rather reveal, because I'm so interested in comics, but also in film. And I tend to be a lot more visually oriented.
Mm-hmm. And you also don't shy away from a lot of negative space. Like you said earlier, you leave a lot of space open for the reader.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that just from reading Maids, is that a lot of cartoonists usually aren't comfortable with leaving negative space in their panels. So it's nice to see that.
It's nice to have space to be able to put yourself into, as well. And if you can kind of feel the space rather than having everything described to you, I was looking at Julia Graffair's new comic Vision, and it's really brilliant in the backgrounds because it's all kind of very gestural, but you still know what it is, but you don't have to get into these fussy details of like, okay, what would this fabric look like? Or, what does sort of every angle in the room need to look like? And I think it's very expressive in this cool way. And for me, I kind of, Maids was this opportunity to do a visual representation of all of these ideas that come from like turn of the century psychoanalysis and put them sort of into process. And so, you kind of have liminal spaces, you have abject spaces, you have, sort of womb-like spaces when rooms are really red. There was a lot of opportunity to just experiment in that way, and I'm really happy with it.
Awesome.
So kind of speaking on Maids, we had another question from Instagram user Gabagool, and Ghoul was spelled out. I was wondering what sort of research went into Maids, like what sort of books, documentaries, etc. did you use while making the book?
I really only had one main resource for it, which is a book. It's a compilation of essays. It's called The Pepin Sisters. It's like an Oxford Studies book. And it's kind of like reporting on the actual case, you know, just kind of like police reports and summaries of what actually happened that night. And then there's a lot of theoretical writing about sort of what the overall implications of the case were, sort of how they twisted up like the French psyche at that time. So it's nice, you know, the essays are fine, but it's, as far as like, you know, a really juicy like true crime book, I haven't really seen one out there. There are a few films about the Pepin sisters that are, you know, insanely dramatized and really over the top and really camp. And I think those are wonderful, you know, for what they are. But I wanted to strike a balance of something that was going to be a little bit more realistic, but also kind of visceral on like a psychological level.
Hell yeah, I think you accomplished that from, you know, the read through personally.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's really strong work in my opinion. And I think that it's one of those books that, you know, I feel like true crime right now is like so hot that I think that it's one of those comics that can be, you know, well, an independent comic rather, that could be on the shelf of like a mainstream bookstore and find an audience just with the subject matter and how well the comic conveyed that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope so, you know, knock on wood. And I have to say that Jack Cohen, the publicist at Fantagraphics, was so happy to know that I was working on this, because she was like, it's true crime. Like, yes, this is going to be great. You know, like we're going to be able to get you everywhere. And I was like, you know, it's like eyeball gouging and like stabbing and the mundanity of, you know, housework. It's not exactly like sexy, you know, it's not, you know, don't fuck with cats or whatever. It's really kind of, not that that's sexy, but you know, that's like something you can really like get your teeth into. This is something that's very abstract and punishing and, you know, like lilting. And she was like, yeah, no problem. So, so hopefully, you know, the reading, you know, the world of readers will enjoy it and find something that they can sink their teeth into, even if it isn't necessarily like as salacious as other true crime stories.
For sure. Well, another question that we had was from Instagram user Jazz Heiss, Jazz_Heiss. Jazz is actually, I don't know if that's their name, but they make comics that are pretty cool. I follow them, so you should check them out if you're listening. But they asked, I just had a question for Katie. I want to know what happened to her Crying of Lot 49 comic.
Well, nothing happened because it was never officially happening. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and it's something that I am in the process with some other very dedicated people of trying to make happen, and we'll see how far we get with it. I was just thinking about it today, and you know, we're just doing our best to try to get the rights to do a graphic novel of it. And I was like, you know, I'm going to be so, if we get a yes, I'm going to be so overjoyed, and then it's going to be so overwhelming because I'm going to need to figure out exactly how I'm going to do this thing. And so, I mean, cross your fingers. I would really love to do it, and we'll see what happens. But who is that cartoonist? Was it like Grant Morrison who like did chaos magic about that one comic? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like his comic was going to get canceled, and he was like, everybody needs to like think about it, and then it won't get canceled.
Oh.
I need everyone to, I don't know if that's right, but I need everyone to do that for me.
Was it the law of attraction, I guess?
You know what? Okay. All these like UK cartoonists and stuff, I get them so mixed up. Like I had to like write a list. It's like Grant Ennis, Garth Ennis. Like who, like all these names are just like so similar. Like Kieran, and then like there's, well, like now I know Warren Ellis, you know, but then there's like all these other guys, and it's like I can't keep them straight. It's nothing personal, but there's a lot of E's, and they just get mixed up. But whoever did that chaos magic thing, I think that's really cool, and I would like to do that as well.
Hell yeah. Well, I'll put it out in the universe for you on my end. So
Thank you.
listeners,
sounds like Grant Morrison.
Yeah, it does sound like Morrison for sure.
User, how do you pronounce this, Cam? Josh Hicks?
Josh Hicks.
Josh Hicks?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Instagram user, Josh Hicks writes, hey guys, questions for Katie. If she had to produce a weird comic adaptation continuation of any film in history, a la Jack Kirby's 2001 A Space Odyssey, which movie would it be and why?
That's interesting. Well, first of all, shout out to Josh Hicks, if it's the same Josh Hicks that I know, who I met when I was in the UK. Hello, hope you're doing well. Let me think, a movie adaptation. I would love to do something really trashy. Like I would love to do like, I know there is a Basic Instinct 2, but I would love to do my own Basic Instinct 2 that isn't so horrendous.
I could see you doing like Frankenhooker.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, I mean, I guess I would love to do like an extended universe of like a Jess Franco film. Like I would love to do like Vampiros Lesbos, and just kind of do parts 2, 3, 4, 5, as many as possible. Because I kind of have some inroads. Like I know a little bit about how to do that. So I would like to do that. Or I don't know, like then, I would love to do like the Amy Fisher story. I think that would be good. I don't know. There's a lot.
Have you ever seen Valerie and Her Week of Wonders?
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, I for some reason when I was reading Maids, I got a vibe from that of that movie. It reminded me of that film for some reason.
That's really cool. I am a big fan of Czech New Wave films for sure. Yeah, like Czech films, Romanian films. There's so much bizarre stuff from the 60s and 70s to kind of get into after you've exhausted all of like, mainland Europe.
Right.
New wave films. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of weird stuff about femininity in those movies.
For sure. There's a lot of paranoia, like old world paranoia, and a lot of inventiveness too. That's really cool.
Yes, definitely. Especially with the practical effects.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Alrighty, so I had one last question, and this question was submitted anonymously. I wanted you to ask Katie about meeting Dylan Williams and Sparkplug Comic Books and her experience there.
Dylan was really great. I met Dylan in, I want to say 2010, and I thought that he was just the most like wonderful, soft-spoken, thoughtful person. He was so supportive and so cool, and he had first seen Nurse on like a mini comic review blog, which feels dated to say now, but he saw it on there and he really liked the look of it, and he asked if he could distribute it via the Sparkplug distribution site. And I was like, wow, of course, yeah, that would be really, really great. And he had Sparkplug as well, and so a couple of years later I asked if he would want to put out a compilation of the comics, and he was down for that. So yeah, he was really wonderful, and he made me feel really comfortable too, which was important. I think when you're first getting started, feeling like, somebody not only gets you, but they want to support you and they want to, kind of champion your work. That's really major, So yeah, he was great. And it was also really kind of funny because I liked Sparkplug a lot, but I just did not feel like Nurse fit in with their catalog at all because, they were very like art comics and serious, like Julia Graffair's first book was there as well. And, it felt much more like, I felt very out of my depth there if I'm going to be totally honest, because I felt like I was doing these, dumb genre comics and that were goofy and, kind of stilted because I was figuring out what I was doing. But that didn't matter to Dylan because he just thought the style was so cool and he thought the perspective was really cool. And yeah, that was major. I'll always be grateful for Dylan. He was the best.
Hell yeah. So that does it for questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask, JB, before we wrap this up and do the closing spiel?
No, I think we covered it all.
Yeah. Katie, is there anything that you wanted to circle back around on?
No, this was great.
All
right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Gutter Boys. We want to thank again Katie Skelly for joining us for this episode. Katie, thank you. Please come back. We would love to have you again.
I would love to come back. I'm a fan. I love Gutter Boys.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and we will definitely need to take you up on a tarot reading if we ever cross paths at a show, if those, I again.
I know. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I have hope. Yeah, I have hope. But in the meantime, Katie, where can people find you online?
You can find me on my website, which is katieskellycomics.com, and you can find me on Instagram. My name is @Skelly. Oh, also on Twitter @nurse_nurse if you want to follow me for more updates about cartoonists in the club.
Cool.
Hell yeah.
Right.
And Katie's new book, Maids, is out via Fantagraphics on October 13th.
Yes.
Perfect in time for the Halloween season. I know you can get that at fantagraphics.com, but also you could probably order it from your local bookshop or comic shop as well.
You must buy it.
Yeah.
Thanks again for listening, and as always, stay gutter.